Any plan I sign must include an insurance exchange, a one-stop shopping marketplace where you can compare the benefits, costs, and track records of a variety of plans, including a public option to increase competition and keep insurance companies honest.
The public option, whether we have it or we don't have it, is not the entirety of health care reform. This is just one sliver of it, one aspect of it.
That is not the essential element.
So the public option is not a deal breaker from the president's standpoint?
Well, I think there will be a competitor to private insurers. That's really the essential part.
Sunday must have been a very slow news day, because here's the bottom line. Absolutely nothing has changed.
Well, there you see the evolution of nothing changing from the administration's point of view about the public option, which is government-run health insurance. They wanted at one point it to be a part of the a plan on the table to compete against private health insurance companies. But there's some debate about whether they're abandoning that position or wanted to over the weekend. So what about all of this? Let's bring in our panel. Fred Barnes, executive editor of the Weekly Standard. Juan Williams, news analyst for National Public Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Fred, you saw the evolution there. What are your thoughts?
My thought is that President Obama is being batted around like a tennis ball. You know, first he finds that the public plan it's not passable. You can't get a health care reform bill through as long as that's in it. So Secretary Sebelius and President Obama give hints that, okay, we're not going to insist on that. Then they need these co-ops or something like that. And so what happened? And then what happens? Well, then the liberals, particularly in the House, they bat the ball back and say, wait a minute, we're not going to vote for a reform bill if you don't have them in there. And no doubt, and then we get, you know, batting back from, well, Secretary Sebelius saying, well, I don't know how anybody thought we were abandoning the public plan. Look, this means when the administration is in this shape over key elements on their bill, they're hurting. I mean, they're not going to get a health care reform bill through this way.
Juan?
Oh, I think that this is all about compromise. I think that right now you've got Secretary Sebelius, I think, floating a trial balloon. She's on the wrong end of the balloon because she's the one floating away, not the balloon. Because just as Fred described, what has happened in response to the trial balloon is there's been a lot of fire coming from the left saying, hey, wait, how can you have Howard Dean, Paul Krugman at the New York Times, the columnist, saying, how can you have health reform that's any kind of substantial effort without a public option?
But, you know, it wasn't just Secretary Sebelius. I mean, you heard the president there in Colorado saying it's just a sliver, whether we have it or whether we don't.
I agree.
I mean, that was definitely not firmly defending a public option.
No, that's exactly his position, Brett. I think his position, Sebelius' position, it's the administration's position, and they were putting it out there that they are willing to move away from that if that's going to be an obstacle specifically for conservative Democrats. And here I'm talking about people like Senator Kent Conrad. I'm talking about Max Baucus, who's like, both are on the Finance Committee, Senate Finance Committee, and both have said they're likely not to vote for any health reform proposal that includes a public option. So they're looking for different ways to approach it that will get you to the same goal, but get the necessary votes so you can have a successful health care legislation put in place.
But Charles, the interesting thing, and before you make your point, don't they realize that everybody is watching this debate so closely? People are really paying attention to every word that is back and forth. So did they think, the administration think, that they would put this out there and then take it back and say nothing is different?
I think what they are doing is they're relying on Juan to put the ultimate spin on it to make it and make it sound consistent. Look, what's endearing here is the way that the Sebelius has adopted the Obama habit of saying that I've never ever changed or wavered. Remember, Obama did that when he said at first he wouldn't take public monies in campaigns, and then of course he did. He changed his mind on eavesdropping and wiretapping and pretended he never. He always says, as I have always said, I never change. And of course, if you are omniscient, omnipotent, and unerring, then obviously it's in the eye of the beholder who's not able to read Obama's scripture correctly. He clearly has shifted radically. You can't say on the one hand, it must be in anything I sign, and then say it's only a sliver and pretend that you are consistent. What happened is they understood that with the public option, the public anger is so high they will pass nothing, and that's why it's been abandoned. All of this is a way to placate the left, which understands it's a kabuki dance. It's a way of pretending that it's still on the table. It's off, it's gone, it's dead. It's a dead parrot.
So the alternative is said to be the cooperative, which the Senate Finance Committee is looking at. Regional cooperatives, here's the definition. Small businesses, small cities band together to negotiate health insurance coverage for employees and citizens in a not-for-profit alliance, essentially like a credit union, some electric cooperatives. Fred, what about people trying to understand how the pros and cons of co-ops?
Well, I don't know. Who knows what kind of co-op they're talking about? You can have all kinds of co-ops. You can have a co-op that just offers insurance and steers you to health insurers, or you can have a co-op, as there are a couple of them, that actually run hospitals and have doctors and so on. I mean, who knows what they're talking about? Here's what's significant to a lot of Republicans, and the person talking about this today was Senator John Kyle of Arizona, who's the #2 Republican senator, saying, look, all the Democratic senators, and he quoted a whole bunch of them, have said, okay, the co-ops are fine. We'll make them look just like the public plan, and it'll do the same thing. I mean, co-ops aren't as dead as the public plan is, but, boy, they're not off to a good start.
Democrats, Fred, would say Republicans then aren't going to sign on to anything.
Well, they're not going to sign on to, I'll tell you one thing they're not going to sign on to. They're not going to sign on to a bill. When the president runs around talking about how much he wants to cut health care costs, and he won't do the one thing, as Charles has written, that would cut health care costs more than anything else, and that's tort reform, to cut back on abusive lawsuits. And the president won't do that, which undermines his entire argument about, I want to cut costs.
Juan, there are a lot of questions about co-ops still, because we just don't know.
We don't know, and I think that, you know, I don't agree with Fred about tort reform. I think that you do need to limit it, but you can't take away that as an option for people who have been treated badly by doctors. No, I think the question here is cost. You'd have to have, like, I think the estimate is $6 billion from the federal government to help some of these co-ops get started as a viable mechanism for providing competition to the existing insurance companies. The insurance companies, I must say, they're the ones that have brought about so much of this crisis. People feel that they cannot negotiate fairly with the insurance companies, that if they shift jobs, they lose their insurance, that they're, because of pre-existing illnesses, are excluded from insurance. You know what? Somebody has to rein in the insurance companies, and this is an effort to do it. And this is why you have cooperatives that may prove to be the successful mechanism.
Maybe they can use the unspent stimulus dollars for that. Charles.
The billions that the government will put in as so-called seed money, the problem with that is not cost, it's control. If you're a liberal and you understand that the public option is dead, you would want to have a cooperative with the feds putting all the money in, and then there's a pretense that it's run by the members. If the money is federal dough, the feds are going to be in control. And, for example, if a co-op goes bust, then the creditor, as in a bankruptcy court, inherits it. And they would actually have control of a co-op, and it would be a seed of a public option, which is what the liberals would want.
Up next, the panel will discuss the life and work of our colleague Robert Novak, who passed away today.